Friends, good afternoon in our time. Many researchers believe that on our planet there is a highly developed civilization that many years ago settled at the bottom of the ocean. This conjecture, to many, may seem fantastic. However, there are many facts testifying in its favor. For example, in Japan, where I read about the mysterious underwater inhabitants, mention of them can be found in the myths of many peoples of the world on the clay tablets of ancient Sumerians, for example. Mentions a race of half fish, half people, which lived in the waters of the Persian Gulf. The most interesting thing is that the underwater inhabitants at one time maintained close contact, and not only maintained but also taught them intelligence. In the tablets written in the part of the Persian Gulf that adjoins Babylon, there were animals called unimai, endowed with intelligence, which, during the day, communicated with people and taught people to write all kinds of sciences and arts, to build houses and temples, to engage in agriculture. They spoke in a human voice like us. When the sun went down, the creatures sank back into the baywater because they were amphibians. But here's the interesting thing. On February 5, 1964, an unidentified underwater object caused the sinking of the USS Hutley. Although it had been converted from a military search and rescue boat and was more reliable, it did not, however, save her from the accident off Cape Mendocino, California. All 11 surviving crew members, including the captain and his wife, insisted that a metal object had sunk the yacht several months before the sinking. Texas Star Power 2 reported an unusual phenomenon on the night of September 12, 1963. They saw an unidentified underwater object at a distance of 3 miles from the tower and asked to send a U.S. Coast Guard ship to the area by radio. However, the object sank significantly before the ship arrived at the site. The search for the mysterious object with the use of aircraft did not give any results. People on the Tower 19 people told about the flashing spotlight on the object and the clouds of steam enveloping it. Visibility that night was very good, and the entire installation crew observed the maneuvers of the unidentified object for at least 20 minutes. Missing October 25, 1962, the Los Angeles Times published an article by science journalist Mervyn Males on Soviet submarines containing an account by the skipper of a fishing trawler. On July 28, 1962, the trawler was 6 miles southeast of Evelyn when, just before dawn, the skipper noticed a series of motionless lights in the darkness. The skipper took binoculars and brought them to his eyes and was extremely surprised to see a small lighted platform. The skipper's mate also began to observe the mysterious submarine through binoculars. Later, both witnesses said that the platform resembled the stern of a submarine and that 5 suspected sailors were doing something on it. 2 of them were dressed in white, 2 in black pants and white shirts, and 1 in a sky blue suit like a parachutist. According to the observers' conclusions, there was no doubt that there was a submarine in front of them. Sitting low in the water, it had no identifying marks. The deck was almost flooded with water, and the vertical rudder was clearly present at the stern. Suddenly, the submarine sped towards the trawler so that the skipper had to make a sharp turn to avoid hitting it. The most striking thing was the silent glide of the unidentified underwater object and the absence of a keel track behind it, while a very powerful wave hit the trawler. The skipper felt obliged to contact the Naval Command, believing that he had encountered an unidentified underwater object off the U.S. coast, Soviet submarine, but the silhouettes of foreign submarines provided to him were completely different from the encountered object. Military experts, having performed the necessary navigation calculations, came to the conclusion that the patriotic message was completely absurd. However, the submarine noticed by Skipper turned out to have a striking resemblance to a high-speed unidentified underwater object, blocked by ships of the Argentine Navy in the harbor of Buenos Aires in June 1959. The blocked object was silver in color and looked like a huge fish, while it had a very high vertical stabilizer. Scuba divers managed to get a good look at this object. However, they were unable to identify it with a submarine. The mysterious incident occurred on September 1, 1968. The research vessel Akademik Kurchatov was drifting near the shores of South America. Thermometers, radiometers, plankton nets, dredgers, and other equipment, nothing foreshadowed abnormal situations. However, something inexplicable happened when one of the devices reached a depth of 500 m. The cable suddenly went sideways as if someone pulled it and sagged. The device snapped. Such a situation happens, but almost always during ascent due to high tension in the cable. And here, during descent at a fairly moderate depth, at extremely low loads in a minute, broke off thick cables with a ground tube and with the bottom breaking 3 cables at once. When the broken cables were lifted on deck, the researchers were surprised to see a 2-meter-long piece of metal rubbed to a shine, as if someone had cut the cable with a huge file. Incredible, but it was impossible to explain what was happening. Such incidents put together really create an impression of activity of some intelligent forces in the water depths.